Hello and welcome to the Peterborough podcast. I'm Kev Lawrence and I've been presenting radio shows in the city since the late 1990s.
And I'm John Baker and I've been a journalist and a marketer in the city for not quite as long.
So each episode, for as long as it takes, we will talk about things going on in and around our city, from politics to posh. If it's in the news, we'll talk about it. We often have guests, and I'm really excited to say that today's guests, well actually they're fellow podcasters. Two Peterborough guys, Mark and Darren. They've got a podcast called Big Fellas, Weight Loss for Men. It is a fabulous podcast. We've both been listening to it, and these guys are brilliant, aren't they?
They are really good. They've got their own journey that they've been through, lost a lot of weight, and hopefully we'll be speaking with us a little bit later on about how they did it, the guests that they've had, and that's kind of a message, an inspirational message for the people of Peterborough, I guess.
Yeah, and it's obviously aimed at men losing weight, which I think is quite unique, because quite often you see weight loss content, be it on the radio or the telly or on podcasts, and it's focused around women losing weight. So it's quite nice to have a sort of an avenue of conversation based around men.
Something a little bit different.
That want to lose weight. So aside from that, I guess the other big talking point is the consultation document from the Peterborough City Council, referenced the budget. The cash-strapped Peterborough City Council need to save money. And goodness me, this document, when it landed, when I first saw it, it's staggering and it's worrying.
Yeah, it made some news, didn't it? Yeah, it's the budget gap in the city has risen from £3 million to £23 million. We'll be looking at that in a little bit more depth, because there is such a high level of demand in areas such as housing needs, home to school transport, adult social care, and matters like that. And yeah, as you say, when that document landed, that made a splash, all right.
Let's get straight to it. I mean, we'll come on to some of the other positive Peterborough news stories in a few minutes, and we'll end the podcast with our guests joining us. But in terms of this budget consultation, so the document, the context behind it is the council's in debt to around 20 to 23 million, and it needs to balance the books.
The gap is 23 million, we should say. Yeah.
Sorry. And I remember, was it a year or so ago, you were talking quite a lot about the, was it the budget calculator, the budget simulator, where members of the public were being asked, well, how would you spend the money?
Yes.
Would you spend more in this area, or would you spend more in that area? And we were engaged. I don't know how successful that engagement was. It was there. Now, I looked online and saw this document filled with cuts and more cuts to try and save money. And it kind of struck me as really tough. This Labour administration that are in, the leader, Dennis Jones, the deputy leader, Councillor Jamil, they've got a weight of responsibility now to try and get the budget balanced. And it strikes me as almost an impossible job.
It's a tricky one. We hope it's not impossible, but it is a very tricky one. Like many local authorities across the country, the figures are difficult. There's no skirting around it. It is really, really tough, and it has been for a long time as well. I mean, something that local journalist John Elworthy said, just a little paragraph from a story he wrote. Unsurprisingly, the headline-grabbing thought is not playing out well, but maybe that was the intention. A wake up and smell the coffee moment to remind City Council taxpayers of the perilous nature of Peterborough finances. And what he's talking about there is the potential of the Lido being mothballed, which is an idea that has been put forward as a proposal.
That caught the headline, and you think about the feelings that everyone who lives in Peterborough has towards the Lido. It's one of the crown jewels of our city, this historic Art Deco building that's been there 77 years, whatever it is, and provides an amazing place to go to during the warmer months. In fact, they've been open a lot longer this past year than I think they normally would have. But the thousands and thousands of people that enjoy swimming in our Lido, the fact that everyone in the city centre drives past it, the history behind it. If you look on the Friends of Lido website, there's some really interesting history that you can delve into about when it was built and who funded it. And all of these years later, we're one of the few cities in the country to still have a Lido, an outdoor swimming pool. And the idea of it being, and I hate this word, mothballed, is appalling to hear this potential. And then you look into the detail as to why. Apparently, it loses 400 grand a year, which I find amazing, because I thought a lot of people go to it, you have to pay to swim. How on earth is it losing so much money?
Yeah, I guess that throughout the summer months, it's You still have to pay for the staff around it, the heating of it. It's such an old building, an iconic building. And yeah, it is shocking. But as John says in that quote there, maybe that is something. Maybe it took some sort of headline grabbing move or potential move for us to take notice of it. And as you said, mothball there. Will it reopen again? We don't know if indeed it is closed or mothballed.
I can't
or whatever.
see that place closing. I think that the uprising in the city, the MP Andrew Pakes set up a petition. Sign my petition, save the Lido. The former MP, Paul Bristow, now a candidate to be the next mayor of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough come the mayoral elections next year. He's adamant that this place needs to be saved. He set up a petition. I was actually quite interested to look at whose petition's getting more signatures. I think Paul Bristow's leading that last time I checked. But it doesn't matter. Whoever you are, whatever political party you might fly the flag for, as a city, we don't want to lose the Lido. Of course,
nobody does. No officers do.
No officers do either.
You know.
So the next question after that is, well, how can we keep it? How can we not see it get lost? And I don't know the answer to that.
Well, and that's not the only thing that's being proposed as well. There are lots of other proposals that you can read in the document. Reducing the cleaning schedule at Central Park toilets.
I know there's a lot about the cuts. I want to come on to them in a minute. I just want to spend a moment looking at the Lido. Yeah. If it costs 400 grand, the regional pool's gone. We have to save it. Where's that £400 going to be found from? We'll come on to the other cuts, but how can we get 400 grand to keep the Lido open?
Hence the proposal to raise council tax
That is
one option. Ask for more money from central government. Make other cuts elsewhere, so that doesn't have to be done. That's what I was saying. You see, there will be an increase of 4.99%. We know that as a minimum on the council tax, but there is a potential for more than that. 6.99%, 9.99% have both been put forward as possible rises.
If it doesn't come directly from an increase in council tax, is there a possibility of an outside partner that wants to take a bit of risk and kind of jointly own the Lido? So put it into sort of partial private ownership and get professional people who can run these sorts of places at a profit, so that it isn't going to cost 400 grand. I know the prices will go up to go swinging.
This will all be discussed, I am sure, and the way of feeling about the Lido on social media shows exactly what the people of Peterborough think about it. Just going back 1 minute, there are other things as well, things that might happen. They've mentioned everything from increasing debt recovery activity for unpaid parking fines, devolving local sports facilities to community groups, cease the funding of 2 speed cameras. These are all proposals, so these will all be looked at.
And there's others. A 10% reduction in the highways budget, reducing funding in leisure and street cleaning. Less street cleaning, it's too expensive. Pretty much cuts across most council services. Which begs the question, are residents really going to support all of these cuts and paying more on top? I mean, that's not going to land well, is it?
But as I say, this happens to local authorities up and down the country, and we are by no means the ones in the worst position. I know that won't placate people, it won't make them feel good, but we aren't the worst. There's going to be some difficult decisions to be taken, as they have been taken over the past few years. I just want to say one thing, actually, that some things that may not have been picked up on as to why we are in the situation we are, and these statistics haven't been widely reported on.
So this is like an explanation on the increased demand on statutory council services.
It's exactly that. It's responsibilities that the council has that are legally binding, and there's a few in the budget paper, and like I say, they haven't really been picked up on. Let me give you an example of why costs have risen, or why the budget gap has risen. The number of people coming to the council as homeless has risen by 40%. Homeless, 40%, from an average of 51 a week in 21-22 to 70 a week in 2023-24. Children's Services, 1,000 more referrals were received in the year 23-24 than in the previous year. So that's up from 2,700 to 3,700. All referrals highlighting concerns about children. Adult social care services have received 2,580 new requests for support in the past 12 months. That's an 18% rise on the previous 12 months. I could carry on, care plans.
So care plans, you go on up.
Care plans, children's services, homelessness
up. So all of these increased demands, the council don't have a choice. They have to
look after these people,
and so that's taking a lot of money out of the pot, meaning the rest of the council services they obviously want to put money towards. There's only so much money in the pot. And
of course, the problem is that when you're in debt, you're paying interest on the debt, and that interest then accumulates, it's compound interest. So that if you can't reduce that debt and your interest keeps going up, then you're paying interest on the interest, etc., and it keeps building up. Don't forget the council's £500 million in debt. You cannot get rid of that very quickly, and the interest on that is quite strong. Debt funds new roads, new schools, regeneration of the city, etc. But it is debt, and it still has to be paid for in terms of interest.
It's also depressing, John. I wish we could find
I'm so sorry.
News
Merry Christmas. There is positive news. Let's look at the railway goods shed. There's going to be a £7 million redevelopment there. You might be aware of that on Fletton Quays. The derelict Victorian Railway goods shed. It's going to be proposed that it's going to be sold for £250,000 plus VAT, and then there's going to be grant funding as well, and then it will be turned into what the council hope to be a thriving destination for food and drink from a host of unique and independent street food vendors.
So we spoke in the last podcast, I think it was, regarding how great the shed is as a place to go and eat and drink.
Brilliant, yeah.
Dave and Karen have got that place thriving. Wouldn't it be great to see the whole of that Fletton Quays area? I don't know when this proposed bridge is going to be built to cross the River Nene, but that bridge needs building quick. Let's get that area of the city thriving, and this whole... What's it called? A food village?
It's food shed, isn't it? A goods shed. Yeah, food and drinks hall is what it's going to be.
At the minute it's a derelict building. Let's get it thriving. Let's sell it off, and let's get more retail in there, particularly with food and drink. I mean, it'd be great for that side of the city. But if you can get to it easier from the city centre.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know whether you want to talk about parking in the Fletton Quays area.
Well, there is a multi-storey car park as well, and that will have to be looked at generally, because you've mentioned that there's a Bewitched there, there's the shed, and then there will be this as well. And if the bridge that you mentioned before, Signet Bridge, is built as well, you'll be able to come across from the embankment. There's
okay, so that's a positive. It's a positive, but there's work to be done.
Yeah.
Tell me some more positives.
Another positive, Station Quarter. After public engagement on the plans for that earlier this year, there was an extensive public engagement, strong support for the scheme from the public, which is great. That should now lead to the submission of a full business case to government early next year, and then we move on and a regeneration of Station Quarter, which we've spoken about before. We've spoken about the station needs a complete overhaul, really. There's only one entrance to it. We need another entrance to it. We need the whole area around it, including the subways, to be designed out, which was the term we used in the last podcast. And it needs to be a better way for both people travelling out of Peterborough and coming into Peterborough.
Okay.
So that is good. The city is still in receipt of £22.9 million of the funding from the Towns Fund programme. There are 8 projects around that, so there's not just Signet Bridge, but which we mentioned, and not just the goods shed, but also we hope for North Westgate, but areas like this, hopefully those will all come to fruition as well. So chin up, everyone. It isn't nobody is trying to say that it's some sort of utopia in Peterborough. What I will say is that the councillors and the council staff and the officers are doing their best to look for options. As I've said before, as we said earlier on in this podcast, there are certain services that need to be achieved, that need to be performed by this council, and they have to be paid for. And the proposals put forward are pretty drastic, and they are memorable, but people will notice them, and people might then realise what sort of financial state the council is in, and hopefully one day it will be better.
Well, you can find that budget proposal, read about it, comment on it through the Peterborough City Council website. Links galore to this budget consultation. We'll be hearing from our guests in a minute. The big fellas, Mark and Darren, have got their Weight Loss for Men podcast. They're going to join us in a moment, and we'll talk all things losing weight and that podcast. But maybe just as it is the sort of festive season, I just want to do a shout out to everybody from Neem Park Trust who had this wonderful event running through the month of December. Have you been to the festival?
I haven't.
The Winter Festival?
No. Is it good?
It's fantastic. It's so magical. It's not just Christmassy, it's so much more. Just celebrating how beautiful Neem Park Trust is at this time of year. And families have been going to that and loving it. I want to do a shout out to the Cresset and the Key.
I'm going to the Cresset pantomime tomorrow night.
At the time of recording, John is about to go to the pantomime. Oh no, he isn't. Both brilliant pantomimes. So Snow White running until early January at the Key Theatre, and Cinderella is the Cresset pantomime this year, running until December the 31st. And while we're doing shout outs, maybe a shout out to Peterborough Cathedral. Goodness me, in recent weeks, at the time of recording, they've been doing so many different things.
Stuff. Yeah, great stuff.
The Peterborough Sings, apparently it was a big success, their final performance in the cathedral. Yeah, Paul Stainton's old school Christmas disco, which was a big hit.
Yeah.
Then you had the Christmas Carol performances. Chapter House Theatre went into the cathedral on December the 16th and 17th, and they told the Ebenezer Scrooge story, A Christmas Carol, the old Dickens stuff, and apparently it was just wonderful. G4 playing, all sorts of...
Lux Morales before that. Yeah, they've had a good spell.
But just sort of sticking with that festive feel, no end of services. Christmas Day, I know that there's services at like 7, 8, 10, 12, throughout the day, wonderful services. And I want to do a big shout out to all of the clergy at our cathedral, but all of the staff, all of the volunteers that help make our wonderful cathedral what it is. Maybe a little festive round of applause as we do shout outs for so many good people in our city, and then we'll meet our guests. Go on. Yeah.